Welcome back to the Wellness Wire, where the opposite of addiction is connection. I'm Eric.
And I'm Wade.
And Happy New Year. It is 2025. What?
Yeah.
How about that, guys? Made it another trip around the sun. A lot of time of new beginnings, fresh beginnings, new starts. Maybe you have a New Year's resolution that you want to add to your sobriety journey. Maybe sobriety is your resolution this year. Maybe this year's the year that you're going to get the new job, or you're going to get your license back, or you're going to win your DCS battle and get your kids back. Whatever that is, we all have these great, brilliant, fresh, new goals for ourselves in this new year, and there's no better and exciting time to be a part of a self-improvement journey than the month of January of any year. But on the same foot, sometimes the month of February sees a lot of those resolutions and a lot of those goals and a lot of those dreams start to die. And that's what we're going to touch on today. We're going to touch on, yes, it is exciting, it is important, and yes, it is a new year, new you, new beginnings, right? And we want all of that for you. But how do we maintain our goals, set smart goals, and how do we structure our daily routines to put ourselves in the best position to see these resolutions through? And that's what we're here to talk about today. And it's not just about recovery, but this is more just about New Year's resolutions in general, right? Because we've all said it time and time before, this year's going to be different. This year's going to be different. And sure enough, that year wasn't that different than the year before. And I don't think it's because we didn't want it to be. It's not because, we sat to ourselves and we thought, you know what? I'm going to have the same mediocre year that I just had. I'm going to do the same thing. I think I'll get another couple DUIs. Yeah, I think I'll default on another loan. I think I'll get evicted again. I think I'll get my car repossessed again. Like, nobody is sitting there saying I'm going to repeat that. But yet, at least for me, that's what my life was. It's like another trip around the sun, more legal problems, more debt, another eviction, right? And it just kept going and going and going. And I never started that year thinking to myself, it would be great if I repeated exactly what I just did for another 365 days. And a lot of my years turned out that way. And we're just here to talk about New Year's resolutions, just personal development goals, SMART goals, and how to structure your daily routine to obtain them.
I love it. All good topics that I think are super important to touch on this time of year, because like you said, I don't want to say no one, but most people don't go into the new year without that this year is going to be different feeling. This year is going to be better. And if you are in a place that your mind is, what is going to be different this year, it's a great time to start thinking about what is going to be different this year. I see a lot of times people, they start getting down on themselves of, I can't change, or I've given up. And now is the time. Last month was the time, 2 months ago was the time, but don't let this year be another just average, mediocre year for you. If you think that you're not capable of doing these things, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. You are capable of being someone different. You can be someone different today than you were yesterday. You can be someone different next hour than you were this hour, but it all starts with doing some changes, and they're minor changes, and you have the ability to do that.
Right. And I think, it's just so important to talk about, because everybody talks about new year, new me. Let's get after it, hit those fitness goals, those financial goals, those personal development goals. But yet, sometimes we're not given insight and resources into what exactly, or how exactly, I should say, we should be structuring those goals, right? And a big part of Plugged In's Sober Livings, right, the monthly, weekly meetings with the houses, you'll see is SMART goals. SMART. They stand for
Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely.
boom. And that is how you can begin to structure your New Year's resolutions in a way where you can overall obtain what it is that you're after. Excuse me, still getting over some of the flu this year, but yes. So that is what we're here to talk about today. We're here to shed some insight into setting smart, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goals, how that can pertain to your recovery, how you can add into your recovery, keep packing into the stream of life, and overall just obtain your goals. That's what we're trying to do today. We're trying to actually have a new year, new me. So let's get into it. We'll start off by just going over the basic breakdown of SMART goals and what that could look like for your New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, so the reason why this is so personal to my heart is it's something that I use in my day-to-day life, and I have been using in my day-to-day life for the last 4.5 years of my sobriety. I was trying to do this before I got sober. I could just never live up to the lofty goals that I had for myself, and I would set myself up for failure because the goals that I had weren't smart. You know, it was this year I'm going to make $1 million, and I'm going to be the best boyfriend, I'm going to be the best son, I'm going to have the most sales on my team, and I'm going to have the best body I've ever had, and this year I'm getting the six-pack, and I'm going to buy the new car, and I'm going to have a house, and they're all great goals to have if somebody wants to move themselves forward in life, but there was nothing very specific, right? What house am I going to have? What sales number am I going to have? What amount of time in the gym am I going to have, or what does that look like? It's all on this actual path to that goal, which is I need a specific goal to get to, right? So the specific goal, let's for instance say this year I want to get 90 days sober. I want to get a year sober. I want to wake up January 1st, 2026, and I want to have a year, and if you're a week into this right now, a year and a week sober. Right? Or I want to be coming up on my year sober, whatever it is. And so I have a specific goal. Is it measurable, right? Yes, I can measure that in a year from now, will I be sober, won't I be sober? Yes. Is it attainable, right? I think it is attainable. Anybody can get a year sober, right? Is it realistic? Well, it is realistic because I know that to get that goal, I'm going to have to work my way backwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to get 1 month, and then I'm going to have to get 2 months, and then I'm going to have to get 90 days, my 6-month chip, my 9-month chip. I'll get to pick up my year chip. And then is it timely, right? Did I set clear parameters around when I'm going to get this goal? And by doing that, I can really get to anything I want. And I don't have to bite this big piece off at one time. All I really need to do is start, and I know it goes back to the simple things that you might see on any AA meeting hall wall, but like one day at a time, right? Like, what do I have to do these 7 days towards that year goal of being sober? Well, I have to be sober for these 7 days. I have to, what is it going to take to get sober today? Well, I'm going to have to wake up and pray. I'm going to have to call somebody in the program. I'm going to probably have to call my sponsor because I'm so early on. I'm going to need to be checking in with him every day. I'm going to be needing to get in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or whatever, well-brighty thing that you're doing, that whatever it is, right, your path. But I have to do that today. And if I have to do that today, I'm probably going to have to do that tomorrow. And then once I get that week, maybe my next week, based on my sponsor's direction, looks a little bit different. And I put 2 weeks together. And then, sure enough, I have to pick up the 1 month chip, and we start breaking it down that way. But I think the biggest thing that I always ran into is I set all these goals that didn't have anything that I could really measure up against, that I could not track my pace. And then I come to the end of the year, and I would find out that this year was the exact same as last year, and I'm stuck in the same place. And maybe my goal is to be sober for this year, and it's going to start with me having to go into a detox, because I've found out by now that I cannot get 3 days sober. Right? So what like actionable step do I have to do? I have to get detoxed. Maybe I need to go to a 30-day residential. Maybe I need to go into sober living. Whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is something that you see, and it's not just about recovery. This is just something that we all tend to do, and I did it for so many years of my life, is just like we somehow convince ourselves that just because it's a new calendar year that we're all of a sudden going to be capable of accomplishing these monumental tasks that we've never actually been able to tackle before. And yet we, at least for myself, it's like I never actually restructured my life, my spending habits, my anything to get myself anywhere near where those goals would be. I just like imagined those goals in my life and then just said, yeah, this year is going to be the year that I get the nicer car and I make more money and I do all of these things. And then I just continue living my life the same exact way that I did all the way up until that point. And then I just become disappointed that I didn't all of a sudden just like magically have a 6-figure income and a nicer car and I had a nicer condo and all these other things. And it's like I did very little work in my life to get anywhere near those goals, and it's because they weren't realistic, obtainable goals, right? And so that's just something that in early sobriety, and we see it all the time. I just did an interview with one of our house managers, Dominic, and he touched on it so perfectly in that interview where it's like he had this idea that he was just going to somehow go to sober living, stay there for like 3 to 6 months, save up enough money to buy a car, get his license back, pay his court fees, move out, get his own place, and like that 6-month runway in sober living was going to afford him all of that, right? And then he's in sober living for 2 months and he hasn't found a job yet, right? Or like all of a sudden he figures out that the job that he found isn't going to give him the amount of money that he needs to like accomplish all of that in that 6-month span. But what happened is throughout that process, he started working the steps, he had a sponsor, and he started setting more realistic goals. Senior was a huge part of that, obviously, of like, hey, instead of just like thinking that this is what sober living is going to do for you, why don't we dial it back and set a more realistic expectation? Instead of 6 months, what would a year look like, right? What would a year look like of you paying $800 a month in rent, having the extra accountability in sober living, even if you have this 15 an hour job and you're working 40 hours a week, your overhead expenses aren't that much because you have a more affordable living situation in sober living. You should be able to save at least this much in this amount of time. And that's how you start working towards SMART goals. Realistic, obtainable goals is not just saying, I want this, so like, but how are you going to get there? Is more of like, if this is your overall goal, this is what you're working with, like here are some measurable things that you can do to try to at least get closer to that. Because the truth is, we've all done it before. You like show up to a meeting one day and you see this guy that's got like 10 years sober and he shows up in a Porsche and he's like owns his own business and you're like, I want what that guy has. And you think that he just like magically did that in his first year of sobriety. And it's like, no, that's like probably not what happened, right? But it's like we just all of a sudden are like, well, he has it, so I want it, so this is what I want. And it's like, okay, but you're in sober living. Like sometimes you need to take a more entry-level job and you need to learn better budgeting skills, and maybe you have debt to pay off, but it's like those things are just actionable things that you can do, but it's going to be smaller steps towards that goal rather than you just like making that leap in like a 1-year span. So it is important to set SMART goals, and it is important to talk about that. So that is the importance of setting SMART goals. And I think another huge pitfall that I fell into when it came to setting goals for myself, especially when I was like early in sobriety, in the early days of like in sober living, just finished like outpatient, is I remember I went into treatment in July of 2020, and I finished like outpatient. I did like the full 30 days inpatient. I did 30 days of PHP. Then I did 60 days of IOP. And so by the time I was wrapping up with all of that, it was right at the end of 2020 going into 2021. And I remember that was right around the time where it's like, okay, I'm done with outpatient. I got like the customer service call center job, and I was, working out of the garage of the sober living I was living at. And I like had these like extremely unrealistic goals of what my 2021 was going to look like, right? And I started setting all of these goals, and the thing that I didn't realize then that I do know now is what's more important than setting obtainable, measurable, timely goals is your intentions behind setting those goals, right? It's like, am I setting all of these financial goals because I just want to create a better life for myself and then use that wealth and those resources to then help others and everything else? Or do I want it because I want to buy myself a car and I want to buy myself this and I want to just get all this other stuff for myself, right? And it's like when we have selfish, self-centered intentions for our goals, that could dilute or like at least convolute what the meaning is behind it, right? And then now it's like we're chasing after these things for the wrong reasons, which is another a pitfall of setting New Year's resolutions and goals for yourself in general.
I completely agree with you. I think most people grossly overestimate what they can do in 1 year, and they tragically underestimate what they can do in 5 years. And if you're not setting yourself up for success with a firm foundation, which needs to always start and be rooted in your spiritual foundation and your recovery. And I see that even today. It's, what does like meetings look like? What does my recovery look like? I can set all these lofty goals of what I want to do, but I have to remember at the root of Wade is a disease that tells Wade all of these lies of that you need this and you want that, and what purpose are they truly serving? So if I'm centered in my recovery and I'm centered in a spiritual foundation, usually my motives and my intentions of what I want to go out and set and do are in the right place, and then stuff seems to just start working itself out, and the other portion of that is, am I setting financial goals? Am I setting, health goals? Am I setting family and relationship goals? Am I setting spiritual goals? Am I checking off all of these areas? And in all of these areas, are they setting myself up for success to be of maximum service to other people? Or like you said, is it just so Wade can get what he wants? And regardless, Wade will get what he wants if he's out there helping other people. Jim Rohn says that best. But the other portion of that is, am I willing to sacrifice in the now to get to where I want to go later on? I know like so many people, I have this goal in 6 months, or I have this goal in a year, and like, is it obtainable? Maybe. Is it, you're going to really have to stretch for it? Probably. But what I find is after, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and it's just so funny how it always kind of relates back to sobriety, is you start feeling yourself a little bit. You start seeing a bank account go, a little bit higher. And now all of a sudden, where it was like, hey, I'm not going out on the weekends, I'm really focused on my goals and what I'm doing, I deserve to go out this weekend and have a nice meal. And it sets it off in that chain reaction, no different than I get 90 days sober and I deserve to have a beer. I deserve to go to this concert. I deserve. It goes I, and we lose sight of what was important. And the problem is when we slip, it's so hard to come right back into that routine and that methodology that got us to where we were to be successful. And so whether it's like you go out for that fancy dinner, now 2 weeks later you're going out for another fancy dinner, and you forget that you didn't go out for a fancy dinner for 90 days. But your mind tells you it's been a whole 2 weeks now. And then that time frame gets shorter and shorter, and you wonder why your savings account isn't getting larger and larger like it was in that first 90 days. And it's because like you don't have that momentum built up anymore. So if you set aside that little goal in the beginning and you just say, this is what I'm willing to sacrifice to get to where I want to get. And it's always got to start with a firm foundation in your recovery, because otherwise your thinking and your alignment is just going to be off of what you're shooting for in the first place. Then I think anything is possible for you.
Yeah, you have to always look at the intention of like why you want what you want, right? And it's funny, my sponsor, he mentioned this to me in a way that like really made sense for me. Is like he's like, you can pray. Let's just say you're praying for a car, right? You're like, I really want a car, I want a vehicle, right? And your intention could be, I want a car, I want a vehicle so that, you know, I can get myself to work and I can get my, you know, I can give rides to maybe a newcomer at the Sober Living, to meetings, and like use that car as a tool to help myself and like the people around me. Or do I want that car just so eventually I can get that car and then I'm just going to spend all my time going out or like picking up girls or whatever it may be, right? It's just like there's two different motives as to why you want the car, but you're still praying for that car. But what happens is like when you eventually do get that car, if really what you wanted it for was so that all these girls that you're talking to on Hinge, and that you're not telling them that you're in Sober Living and then you're going to go pick them up and blah, 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 then that's what you're immediately going to do once you get that vehicle, right? And then you fall right into that trap of like you're nowhere near where you wanted to be, instead of like, I really wanted this vehicle so I could get to work and I didn't have to pay for Ubers anymore and I can give guys rides to meetings and build on my recovery. And that's what you'll use it for when you eventually get the vehicle. And so your intentions as to why you're praying for something and why you're setting a goal is equally as important, because at the end of the day, whatever your true intentions are of why you want something, is when you eventually do get that thing, that's what you're going to do. What if you want to lie to yourself along the way, you can, but you know deep down inside you can say you want all these things for all these altruistic, meanings, but at the end of the day, if you know deep down inside you want it for selfish reasons, as soon as you get those things, those blessings, you're going to use it for selfish reasons. And it's something that happens time and time and time again, and those blessings can turn into tools of destruction. Really, when it comes down to it, because it's like you do get the money and you get the vehicle, and then you go off and do the complete opposite thing that you were intended to do with it, and it could set you down the wrong path. So when you're setting a New Year's resolution or just a personal development goal or just a goal in your recovery, always keep in mind your intentions behind why you want those things.
Not only that, but what are you doing when you're building those things up? And what I mean by that is, it's very hard to say my intention is to give rides to meetings to these guys and my intentions is so I can get to work, and at the flip side of it, I'm not going to any meetings and I'm not going to work, so what makes me think that all of a sudden this car shows up on my lap and now all of a sudden I have this huge kick to start going to meetings with guys, and I'm going to give all the guys rides, and I'm going to, stay late at work, and I'm going to, drop off this guy on his way to work so he can get to a job and doesn't have the stress I had, when like I wasn't willing to do any of those types of things before I had the car. What makes me think that I'm just going to wake up and feel different tomorrow without building those habits? I think that's what so many people I see in our houses or just goal setting miss, is that they think when they get the thing, they're going to be the different person, but they're not willing to put the work in to be that different person before the thing already arrives. Because that thing will arrive when you are the person that you need to be. And otherwise, you're just going to lose it.
Yeah. And here's another thing, too, that I wanted to touch on when it comes to this time of year, when you talk about New Year's resolutions and everybody's got this like new year, new me, right? And everybody has these huge goals for themselves and it's going to be a different year, is, for a lot of us, maybe you're not coming off like the best year, right? Maybe this past year you had a lot of ups and downs, right? And you're thinking to yourself, how do I avoid another year of that? Or how do I learn from some of these mistakes that I made throughout this past year? Or you're thinking to yourself like, man, I really dug myself into a hole. There's no coming back from this. Whatever that looks like, I'm telling you, over the past 6 months of my life, I have done an incredible job at deteriorating what I had done for the entire year up to that point in my life when it comes to my recovery, my spirituality, professionally. I've done a lot of things that have derailed a lot of progress that I've made, and I've spent so many nights and weeks thinking about, how did I mess this all up? How did I get to this point? I'm never going to recover from this. And just when I think that it's not going to get any worse, I find another way to dig the hole a little deeper, right? And I'm spinning and spinning and spinning. I'm thinking to myself, how do I do this? How do I do this? And now I'm living my life in this fear-based life of like, I'm trying to hang on to the last little bit of what I have, right? And it's like you get into this cycle. And you start trying to live your life in a way where you're trying to manage the mishits instead of just proactively get after it, right? And I'm here to tell you that after going through all of that, you know, the way through it is through it. And it's like, I'm here to tell you that I know exactly where you're at in that situation, right? And you're thinking to yourself, I really fucked this up. I don't think there's a way out of this. There's no way I'm going to repair any of this, and the damage is already done, and I just got to hang on. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way, and you don't have to be the person that you were yesterday, and that things can change, and you can change. And a lot of the time, you're just not looking at the bigger picture of like, look at where you were at a year ago, look at where you were at 6 months ago, whatever that is. And it's like, look how far you've come. You made the change then. What were you doing then? Revert back to that, right? Now maybe I should start calling my sponsor every day. Maybe I should start getting involved with church again. Maybe I should start going back to my home group and trying to revive that. Whatever that looks like for you, there's actionable things that you can do to get back to where you were when you had all of that momentum and you were doing really well. Because there is a point in your sobriety and your recovery journey where maybe you're going to stop doing those things, and maybe things aren't going to be as good for you, and maybe you're going to mess some things up, and there's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle trying to get back to that. But it is possible. But the only wrong thing you can do is give up in that situation, because if you give up and you just try to walk away and you don't try to go through it, you don't try to improve yourself, then you're just going to reset yourself all the way back to square one, when it doesn't have to be that way. Right? And it's like, that's another thing too when it comes to New Year's resolutions and personal development, is you're going to fuck things up sometimes. Like, you're not always going to just be on point. Like, you're going to, you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet, as they say, you know, and you're not always going to be on point, and maybe you're going to fall off of the track spiritually or whatever that looks like. But the only thing that you can do that will derail yourself completely is give up. And so I'm just here to tell you, based off of personal experience, the past 6 months of my life has not been the best, but you're still in the fight. You can still battle back. There's still a path to redemption, but it just takes work, and it's about starting small and working your way back up to where you're at. But that's my little rant.
I love it. No, that's just truth and honesty, and that's what we should always be able to be about. And I've been in a similar situation where you get some time, and again, it becomes hard to do all the things that it took to get what you have. And not only that, why have the motivation? Because you have what you wanted in the first place, and you stop doing the things. But the solution is always easy, is get back to what you were doing that got you there. As hard of a track as it may seem to get back onto that beaten path, you know what it takes because you've done it before, and you're probably ahead of where you were the first time that you had to get it back. You're probably in a worse position then. The only thing that's different is you had a little bit more willingness and a little less ego to get you there. And I think the natural response for anyone when you see things slipping away, or you see, you know, this last year was so bad, and how am I going to come back from that, and anything else, so you're just trying to grasp on. But the more you try to grasp on, the more things get out of control, when you realize that if you just go back to what you were doing in the first place, which was generally putting one foot in front of the other, creating routines, having structure in your life, that all of a sudden the other things just come easy. Now all of a sudden, you know, doors turn into windows, and everything is getting, it's just easy. It's easy. Instead of me having to control and think I'm doing this and like try to position that and do this and that, it just all of a sudden starts working out in my favor. And now, how does he get so many breaks? And it's like, I don't think you get so many breaks. What it is, you put in all the work that the breaks just start to happen, that momentum starts building, and one thing after another, you're in a place that puts you ahead of everybody else from all the stuff that they couldn't see. All you have to do is you just keep showing up every day. I don't know when all of a sudden the six-pack shows up. Right? Does it happen on day 1? No. Does it happen on week 2? No. Does it happen on month 3? I don't know. Right? But like at one day, you're going to look in the mirror and all of a sudden you're going to start seeing that muscle that was built over time. And maybe it was a couple different decisions, but you go on a bad week, 2-3 weeks of eating, and all of a sudden you're like, shoot, I lost it. How am I going to get back to that? And the reality is that you have the previous, 6 months, a year, whatever you were in the gym and eating right and everything else, you already have that base there. So you just got to get back to that. You're ahead of where you were in the first place. But we like to think, that, no, I have to control it and I have to do this and that. And we're just setting ourselves up for more failure when we realize in the first place, it usually was just a little bit of work. And it was setting ourselves up with a routine and some discipline and trying to have intentions of helping other people, right? And being healthy ourselves. And we usually put ourselves in a pretty good place.
Yeah, 100%. And when you start living in fear of trying to hold on to everything that you think you earned, right? It's like you have to then remember as well, those were all just blessings, right? Those were all blessings and those were gifts and of doing the work that you did to get to that point, right? And as soon as you start viewing all of those things as like your own personal achievements and accomplishments, and then you start viewing them as possessions, and then you want to hang on to them because you're afraid of losing them, you've lost sight of exactly what it is, right, in general. And that, and then, at that point, it's time to revert back to altruism, right? And understanding the only way out of yourself is to get out of yourself, right? I talked to my sponsor and I told him all this the other day, and I was crying and I was freaking out, and he was like, when was the last time that you went to an H&I, or like you even talked to a newcomer, your home group, nobody was even there to open the door for 2 weeks. It's like, do you not see like all of these things laid out right in front of you that are all the things that you had done up until the point when your life started falling apart, and then you stopped doing them, and then you're in this position? It's like, what do you think the answer is? Just like go back and start doing these things again, right? So, it does get overwhelming, and you do get to a point where you think that the only way out is to just walk away, or like, all of these like irrational decisions. But if you're still in the fight, you're still in the fight, and you can change, and it is possible. So I just wanted to shed light on that, because that's some just real world stuff there of, where your recovery journey can take you. And I know a lot of people have similar experiences. So, but other than that, I mean, New Year's, also a happy time, you know what I mean? And maybe you're a couple years into your sobriety journey, and like this is the year that you really want to take it up a notch and like try to reach for those like more stretch goals and stuff like that. I know you've got a lot of experience with that. I mean, what would you say to somebody who's, coming in, they're in their year 2, 3 of sobriety, they've had a stable job for a while, but they know there's something more out there. What does that look like when it comes to setting New Year's goals and personal development goals?
I think it looks no different. It looks no different than how it looked to get you to where you were. It's just you have to get out of your comfort zone. And you have to realize to get to a stretch goal, you're going to have to do just that. You're going to have to stretch. With me, I think I push myself and I push a lot of other people around me way past their comfort zones because I know that they can do more and I know that I can do more. I have this crazy dependence on something bigger than me that no matter what comes in front of me, like I'm going to figure it out. I don't even have to figure it out. It's going to get figured out by someone way bigger than me. And I'm going to be all right. But if you're coming into year 2 or year 3 of your sobriety and you're in a place where it's like, hey man, like I don't like the way this is going, right? I know I can do more, I can be more, I can have more, then like get back to the basics of what is something that you really want, and can we put a timeline on what looks like realistically to achieve that. And like I said earlier, is you're going to grossly underestimate what you can do in a year, and you're going to tragically, underestimate what you can do in 5 years. So just set something, what is a monthly goal for yourself of something that will get you on track to that. You're going to find that you can hit that in a month, right? And then all of a sudden is, what can I do in 6 months that would put me on track to do that? And realistically, we're in a world where, producers are going to produce. Unfortunately, I cannot rest on the laurels of what I did 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, right? Like, I was created by something that's bigger than me, that wants me to continually improve, that wants me to get better. And so what I have to do is I have to try to push myself more, because I'm not here to live a comfortable life. And I don't want to live a comfortable life. What I want to do is I want to push myself, and I want to push others around me to be the absolute best that they can be. And that starts with making sure that I get myself in a good place, and that I'm working on things to improve myself, right? Like, am I being a better friend? Am I being a better boss? Am I being a better, son or significant other, whatever that looks like? It means that I need to push myself to improve, because I want to get in this comfort zone. And when I get in this comfort zone, for some reason things start slipping. And when things start slipping, I try to grasp on. And when I realize that, like, if I just get back to those basics of, hey, like, I have something that's way out in front of me that I'm striving towards. I will never reach perfection, but I dang sure will try to get there as fast as I can get there, right? And like, I'm going to continually every year try to push myself to do something that I thought, 3 years, 4 years ago was impossible. And if I come up a little bit short, like, I know I'll be all right. But, what does it take to buy a house? It takes getting your down payment on a house. And you're not going to just pay for a down payment on a house and not be able to put furniture in that house. So, like, am I really looking through all of these other things that need to happen or acquire? And having a house payment is super scary. You're on the hook for 30 years, right? Are mortgage rates going to go up? Are they going to go down? Do you want to start a new business, right? What does that business plan actually look like? Are you going to start like a detailing company? Okay, do you have all the tools for a detailing company, right? Maybe this year you're not in a position to start your detailing company, but can you set up an LLC? Can you buy your first couple of sets of tools? Can you maybe start some online advertising, or go on GoDaddy or Wix or whatever and maybe create a website? Do you get some traction and calls where all of a sudden now it's easy to go out there and do a job because you weren't even expecting it to come? What little things can I do today to set myself up for success in the future? Because I'm always going to probably try to bite off more than I can chew, and I'm always going to ask for help when I see that I don't have things under control. But the worst thing that I can do is just sit in this place of like quit, right? Or like giving up. If it wasn't meant for me in this moment to do it that type of way, then it wasn't meant for me. But I'm going to learn nothing from it if I walk away.
Yep.
I'm going to learn nothing from it if I walk away.
Yeah, 100%. And it is important, too, to also remember that you really have to kind of fall in love with the process, right? Because it's not always, you're not going to have this intense motivation and determination, right? Like when you first set out to accomplish something, you're so passionate about it. And it's like everything from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, you're like obsessing over it and you're thinking about it, right? But it's like that type of determination and motivation, it's not permanent, right? And eventually you're not going to have that same level of enthusiasm and motivation and determination that you did when you very first started. But if you're in love with the process, right, and you understand that it is a process, then you can then get through some of those down times, right? Because, I do this all the time, and I say this all the time. It's like I am the best person in the world at completing something halfway. It's like I can get something halfway done better than anyone else in the world. But that second half, that's what we're talking about here, where it's just like, that's the difference, right? That's the difference between your New Year's resolution lasting until February and it lasting to January of 2026, right? Is that eventually the fixation, the obsession, that will wear down over time. but the persistence, right, and the consistency is what's going to get you through some of those downturns. And that's what ultimately makes the difference between you coming out the next year actually achieving any of your goals and you not, is having that discipline and consistency in those down times, when it's not just strictly passion and like enthusiasm.
Yeah, you're going to come into times in your life where you are not enthusiastic about what you want to do. Even though a month ago, with all your heart and you truly meant it, just like, the last time you said you really wanted to get sober with all your heart, you truly meant it and is what you wanted to do. And now it just doesn't seem like it's possible, or I don't really feel like staying in on this Friday night because my friends are going to this place that is going to put me in a bad situation. And you're going to have to stick through even though you don't feel like it. But the only way I know to help people through that is the foundation has to be set of like, this is now just who you are. And that is built by just doing it on daily repetition. I go to the meeting every single day, right? Like, it's Friday night, it becomes easy to just be like, this is who I am. I go to the meeting on Friday night. I don't go to the bar on Friday night. And that's how you put that first week. And that's how you put, that cold day in February behind you when all your friends are going and doing something and you haven't gone to your meeting yet. You go like, this is what I do. This is who I am now. And you don't do it because you feel like it. It's just who you are. Like, that's what you do.
Yeah, man. Yeah, dude, it's just so important, and it's like, I really do hope, and the whole meaning behind this episode is that we want you to achieve your goals, and we want you to understand that it's very easy to sit here and push out all the content of like, achieve your goals, motivation, determination, but we want to shed some real world light on it, right? Because it's like, it doesn't always look like that. Like, you know what I mean? You can't just for 365 days get up and just have the same level of like tenacity that you have every single day. It's not always going to look like that, but there are things you can do every single day in your routine that will allow you at least the discipline and the structure to stay on a path towards reaching your goal, even when it's not necessarily how you feel. It's just something that you do. It's habitual. It's a routine, right? And so that's what we want to like put out there. Because it is super important to kind of know that, because sometimes it's like we get so fired up because we watch like a David Goggins video and you think that that level of intensity is just going to somehow magically stay in your mind for the rest of your life. And it's like, no, you're not always going to be that fired up.
And what people don't see is like, that is who David Goggins is every day of the year. That's not a 10-minute video that he shoots and then all of a sudden he goes back to being this lazy guy who doesn't do anything. Like, that is who he is. So that motivation, yeah, it might pump you up. It might get you through the 10 minutes in the gym that you need to be the extra 10 minutes in the gym, or it might get you into making that extra call that you need to make to get the sale that you want to have, or whatever it is, right? But like, until you be the guy who always makes that extra call, until you be the guy that always stays that extra 10 minutes in the gym, like, there's going to be the time where that David Goggins video isn't on and you're not going to have the motivation, and then you're just going to quit and you're going to go home. So like, that internal fire has to start from that is just who you are, doing it day in and day out. I would be lying to you if there weren't days that I just wanted to quit and give up, where I'm like, I'm not having fun anymore, I'm not doing this, because fear sets in, insecurity sets in, ego sets in, whatever it is. But like, I'm past the point of giving into that, of saying like, I'm just not who that person anymore. Like, I have to do this whether I feel like it or I don't feel like it. I have to show up. There's other people who depend on me to show up, and so like, I am going to show up. And it's not always easy to do that when you don't feel like it. There are days where I want to sleep in. There are days when I don't feel good, I'm sick, and I don't want to show up, and I do not have the opportunity or I do not have the I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but like, I don't have that in me anymore to be able, I don't have the gift to be able to do that anymore, right? Like there are many days in my life where I sit back and I go, man, I used to complain about my job, my 6-figure job all the time, how I hated it, but it was so nice to get up at 7 and be done at 3 and not have to answer another phone call or an email or have to, ever work on a holiday if I didn't want to, or I didn't have to, send out an email past my working hours, or I could take a sick day, or, go on holiday or whatever it was. And like, man, I used to complain about that so much, and wouldn't that be so nice just to turn it off? Like I can never turn it off. And like the reality is like I forget how miserable I was at times during that, and I would never give up any stress or anything that I have today, like that I get to be a part of so many other people's lives and all the things that we have going for us, to go back to that life. But like I do have a mind that will play tricks on me that says, oh, well, wouldn't it be nice just to go back to that and just be able to turn it off at 3? Like, do you really like having to be on all Christmases and all Thanksgivings and all 4th of Julys, and you're going to get a call any other time and you got to respond to it? And it's just like, no, like this is who I am now. And I prayed for the hard times that I have today. I just didn't see it at the time.
Yeah. No, that's you always look back with rose-colored glasses sometimes. Yeah. You're like, it was so much better back then. It's like, no, dude. Like,
I was miserable.
You wanted to work for yourself. You wanted to build your dream, and then, now you're doing it, and you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
Let me just go back to the 9 to 5.
When I could like yell at my boss.
Yeah.
Like say they're screwing me, and I could say all that. And now
it's all coming from them.
Yeah.
It's all their fault.
Everybody's out to get me.
Yeah. Well, we hope this helped you guys at least shed some light on some New Year's resolutions, maybe give you some ideas of some goals that you want to set for yourself this year. If you didn't know about SMART goals until today, you're welcome. But we appreciate you guys listening. Subscribe to the channel, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. And we will see you guys in a couple weeks.
See you in a couple weeks, guys.